Hey, good morning, Roman. How are you doing?
Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Kathy is not available this morning. She excused herself. There's some renovation going on in her house, and
Oh,
for that reason, because of the noise, the dirt, the dust, name it, she cannot make it. But she's with us in spirit. And today we have a topic which is about gene, breed, and behavior. Is there any connection?
yeah.
The question
So,
is our relationship with dogs started a long time ago.
oh yeah.
And can you just give us a brief story about the relationship between human and dog?
So I'm not a historian and I'm not
No,
you know, archaeologist, right? I'm just making that
just the
clear.
basic.
What
There
I
was a dog, there was
recognize,
a man. They get together, befriend, and that's the beginning of the story. That was like some time ago.
I'm very interested in dogs. I like to look into the history of dogs. So what I look up for is different information from different languages. Um, there's lots of stuff translated into English, but lots of stuff also translated into French. And there's also some literature in Germany. So collecting all this data together, it seems that these dog breeds are going very, very far back, at least 100,000 years. Now, science can confirm about 50,000 years for now,
Hmm.
but it's still vague because we don't have enough evidence. New things come up. We see that there were burials of dogs with humans that dated back to 30,000 years, and that is not something that comes up over a short period of time. There is a history behind that.
Hmm.
So if we see a dog being buried or being near a home of a human, and we see that is dated down 50,000 years, we can see there is an evolutionary process before that.
Hmm.
There
Yeah.
is a need of a human of um, of a dog, and there is a need of a dog being with humans, and that comes in from further back in time. I don't want to go into very far back, but I
Hmm.
feel there is a misconception about wolves or dogs being descended from wolves directly. The means we have now, like the wolves we see in the woods, is not the wolf that dog is descended from.
Hmm.
So it seems like we had this ancient wolf that is likely to be a common ancestor
Hmm.
of the deer wolf.
Yeah.
And we're looking back at least 125 years ago, 25,000 years ago, because he sadly to be extinguished 125 to 9,500 years ago. So
Hmm.
it means that seems to have some common, but not sure yet. The size matched and all this stuff. Um, Go ahead.
I would say in the present time, we have a established relationship with dogs, and there's several breeds of dog, and we like to explore without pretending to be the scientists and the know-alls of all, but
Mhm.
general understanding of different breed. And why don't we start with the Mastiff? And
Well, my favorite breed.
okay, let's do it. Let's start
So,
with Mastiff.
yeah, well, Mastiffs are known for their size, right?
Hmm.
And we know that the ancient Mastiff is not the original breed. It seems like the Mastiffs tend to be a descendant of the Molosser breeds in ancient Greece, and this breed is likely to be descended from the ancient North African ID breed, which is a large breed that it moved its way up to um, north um, into almost to England, where the Mastiff breed itself was created a couple of hundred years back. The Mastiff breed is definitely a working dog, and it's very important to recognize that even though he's a couch potato, he was used for heavy duty work in the field, like pulling carts, plowing the fields, taking care of guarding the property. So we have this complex job description that a Mastiff has, and it was not trained into. It was
Mm-hmm.
transmitted into from the previous dog that was there. So we see that dog training was not so involved as we think now, but it was a generational transmission. And so we go back to the genetics that dog behavior comes in for a big percentage through genetic information, comes down from the ancestors
Mm-hmm.
plus the environmental factors.
What is the influence of human and dogs relationship there?
Well, Konrad Lorenz was famous and got a Nobel Prize to discuss about the effect of humans into animals. And his theory about imprinting was first published in 1935, if I remember right. And so he talks about how animals imprint their environment as soon as they are born. And if a human is the main important factor and his important environment, then the animals will take information from that. And he proved it basically using geese or goose, sorry, my French here, where the geese will see him as, a parent and follow him doing all this stuff that they have to do. Of course, the geese would not think they're humans. That's not what the point is. But the point is that he basically proves that animals, when they are born, they look for the authority to follow and
Mm-hmm.
gather information for their survival, and that is the imprint. So we see that dogs do the same thing. As they're born in a family, as a family dog, they see that as a family as being consistently re-imprinted again and again through the generations,
Mm-hmm.
and that what makes it a pet, kind of, sort of. Let's call it that term, because the dog is growing into the family, becomes a family dog. But that is just recently happened. I would say the last 200 years, where the dog becomes the in-home dog.
Mm-hmm.
Before he wasn't in home, he was outside of the home. The Germans use the term house dog
Mm-hmm.
and not pet. It's a dog who lives near the house.
Mm-hmm.
So a dog is not free to roam around wherever he wants, like a free dog or the African painted dog, but he chooses or he stays in close property that he considers a family.
You said the Mastiff is a part of the working dog.
Yeah, he's a working breed, and I feel they descended from the ancient Molosser breeds, and they were spread through ancient Greeks. Good example is Alexander the Great, who basically went all the way down to the east and the west to look and spread the dogs through their, um, let's say this way, officials of Alexander the Great, like soldiers who
Mm-hmm.
had specific ranking, would have dogs for their protection. And these dogs were Molosser breeds. They were actually trained war dogs. So
Mm-hmm.
each officer would have one dog, and he would leave officers behind protecting his way back. So he would create Alexandrias, like cities for Alexandria, that
Mm-hmm.
would be his, return points. And each officer would have a dog, and he would mate with locals. And this is how the Mastiff breed was spread throughout the countries,
Mm-hmm.
basically throughout the world.
I have a short video I would like to share about a Mastiff and would like
Oh
to
yeah.
talk about the communication of the Mastiff there, the type of work this dog is doing. So let's see this video in a second. It's a short video,
Hmm.
and here we are. And this,
Elementary school students at one elementary school here in the Commonwealth have a real life version. A 200-pound therapy dog named Gabe. He's a 200-pound Mastiff who serves as a therapy dog at Riverbend Elementary School in Rockingham County. Students write letters to Gabe about why they need extra time with the Mastiff canine. If they're chosen, they get to spend some one-on-one time with this gentle giant.
It's just changed everything. They come back ready and reset and relaxed and just more at peace with themselves after being with him.
He's been just a pleasure. And I don't know that he'll ever be ready to retire. He has a whole different mindset.
Beyond his duties as man's best friend, Gabe also teaches students important lessons about responsibility when they get him water and take him for for walks.
That
Is that
is
not great?
one big old dog. I used to have Great Danes, and they were a little more hyper. He just looked like he was like a walrus just laying there. It was great.
Oh, well, and that's special too. I think about those kids.
So
who
that
play
was the
together,
video.
and
Let's
it's
see. I
great that
hope
they're
the
getting
sound is off now.
that also allows us educators
Mm.
to get a closer look at what's really going on.
Do
in
you
their
still
lives.
hear the sound from the dog?
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Okay. So this is off. Okay. So working dog, right?
Working dog. So we have to be very, very clear. People misinterpret dogs in general. They see a cute dog that has the neighbor has a cute dog and is well behaved, and then they want that dog too. They want the dog because they saw it on TV. They saw the dog in an exhibition. They saw the dog on news like that one, and then want that particular dog. So I think there's a misconception that if I buy a breed, it will behave like a breed. It will behave like a dog I saw in the movie or in the picture
Mm-hmm.
or on social media. They don't recognize that the main factor of a dog is to come in with the genetics of a breed,
Mm-hmm.
but that is the baseline. What the genetics become after, what the behavior becomes after, it depends on environmental factors. While science is kind of like vague about how much percentage comes in from genetics and how much other environmental factors, we know that roughly for humans, we know exactly should be about 48% genetic factors and 52% environmental factors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we speculate that with dogs will be about 60% genetic factors and the rest is environmental factors, but these are scientific, very narrow ideas and they need further exploration.
Mm-hmm.
What I see, no matter what the dog is and no matter the genetics, in the first imprint period and until the dog is about 14 weeks old, this is where the most important switches are being turned on based on the temperament traits. And kind of to mention the few, we have the activity level, we have distractibility, we have intensity, we have regularity, we have sensory threshold, we have approach and withdrawal, we have adaptability, persistence, and mood. So if you look, for example, for the Mastiff, we know that Mastiffs are stubborn, right? And some other breeds that we know of, but that stubbornness is nothing else than persistence or adaptability differences.
Mm-hmm.
It's a job description, and we have to be, aware of that. We cannot just punish the dog because it doesn't follow instructions, because his job is to be persistent on staying on the job. If a hunting dog, for example, wouldn't be persistent hunting, he would never return and never come to the end of hunting. He would just be
Right.
spread out, right?
So that's somebody was looking for a Mastiff as a family dog. What they should expect. This dog in the video we just watched was 200 pounds, and the children were about 40 to 50 pounds each. So it's a very interesting interaction there.
Well, if you get a Mastiff, expect to do a lot of parenting in the beginning, because
Okay.
Mastiff breeds and in general other dogs learn from observations.
Mm-hmm.
So the way you handle the dog is the way the dog will handle other people. If you're rough to a dog, he will handle rough his environment. If you handle the dog gentle and more authoritative, the dog will also apply that knowledge into his environment. So
Mm-hmm.
if you treat the dog accordingly, then your dog will treat your children accordingly.
Okay.
If you teach calmness, your dog will be calm. If you let go of the dog's traits and let him figure out what to do with it, you end up in a disaster in less than a year.
Mm-hmm. That can destroy a couch very quickly.
Oh yeah.
Another breed of dog that we want to talk about today is the Border Collie, and I have an illustration here. That's the guy here. Yep. So the Border Collie is, to my understanding, is a very dynamic and active dog. I have a short video to share with you if you let me do that. Give me a second. Try not to goof up here. Include the sound. And this is a 1 minute video, so that should be quite easy to watch. But it's very interesting to see this dog going on there. I'll remove Bees banner. Okay. There's not a lot of sound there, but it's. I
We
think
can hear, we can hear the background, the way that the his
handler. Yeah.
his handler gives commands
Hmm.
with whistling.
Yeah. Yeah, we hear that once in a while.
So we see how he uses it imitation to push the his flock back into the kennel, but at the same time keeping himself safe and very low. So he's getting out of very good.
Here we are. So that was a pretty good demonstration. How these dog, as a
Mhm.
working dog. Oops, the sound come from. Did you hear the sound? This is not what I want to hear. Hold on a second. Okay. Okay, here we're back. I
So
hope.
border collies and herding breeds are a classic example how dogs are being formed in doing a very specific job. And it was
Hmm.
very difficult, especially in the British Isles where the border collie or the collies came from. And if I remember right, collie or some collie was it's a Gaelic meaning of the color black because the sheeps were black, so they had black dogs
Hmm.
merging with the sheeps and not being visible from far. So if the predators would go after the sheeps, um, or the sheep would not be threatened by the different color, so they would be easily mixed up. So that we see that there was a functional breeding
Hmm.
specific for those dogs to do a specific job, and it was down the generations. Now we see that some dogs need consistent control for them to function complicated or complex behaviors, just like
Hmm.
that, putting the sheep in there where the human judges the behavior and the situations, and the dog is following through. The in contrary to the mastiffs or the mastiff breeds or the guardian breeds in general, they don't need so detailed instructions. They have a clear job description on their own, and they will follow through what they need to do because that's what their generation comes down to. So we see that small difference between a border collie who's being instructed to do things and a mastiff who does things on his own, right?
Hmm.
And that's a very important separation to do. So if you get, for example, a border collie in our home, we need to recognize that aspect that a dog is very obedient, is super great doing tricks and all this stuff. We see all these good fancy trainers who do clicker training and do all these fancy um, exercises with dogs. We see they use border collies because they have such an ability to
Hmm.
follow instructions.
Yep.
And we see that herding dogs in general follow instructions, like the German Shepherd, like um, the Australian sheepdogs too, as
Hmm.
well.
Right. I was about to say or ask. This dog seems to be very active, very dynamic. And if you have the intent to have a border collie as a puppy, as a dog, as a pet in your house, what to expect in terms of basic behavior.
Well, we have to see the border collie doing a specific job. He has to have an ability to understand volume. How many
Mhm.
sheep are there? What is the difference between having one sheep or multiple sheep? He has to understand an idea of a concept of location where the
Mhm.
sheep is, and location where the sheep has to go. It has
Right.
to have a trajectory thinking. From there, I have to go there. How do I get there? And have
Hmm.
different techniques. But it's such a complex thinking process. That's why he needs outsource information. So he knows that sheep have to go somewhere, and he has to recognize that those sheep have to become together, which is kind of like an OCD behavior. I have to keep things together. We see many border collies have OCD traits, like keeping
Hmm.
their toys together in a box, keeping their toys together on the bed. Have sometimes I've seen border collies lining things up, like one toy after the other, which seems ridiculous, but it's a breed. It's bred into because we need that idea, that concept.
One other thing I noticed is this dog, I saw other example before, uh, obey sound signal.
Yeah, well, that's classical conditioning. We
Right,
get that
that's part of the
shit.
treatment, the training. But is that a greater ability for the collie to follow audio signal, or is that
Um,
any dog will be able to follow audio signal?
any dog can follow audio signals. It depends on the memory capacity to remember all these different signals and job descriptions that are
Hmm.
connected to those signals.
Okay.
It's about memory capacity
Hmm.
because how long can your dog remember a specific tasks
Okay.
and in conjunctions with that command? How much
Hmm.
things can we put under one chapter?
Okay. Okay. Great. We have another species, which is the. I'll put the picture first, and this is the American
Oh,
guy.
yeah, American
Staffordshire.
Staffordshire.
Yeah.
I had one a couple of years back. His name was Ziggy. He was a three-legged Staffordshire. He was basically cream white,
Hmm.
and these are tough dogs. Um, and we have to recognize that the breed was bred basically in the early um, 1800s to do a specific job, basically to vermin control.
Okay.
But then we saw because the way they were constructed and the coloring and the ability to not back off of certain situations. And back then in the 1800s, gambling was a big thing, and so fighting dogs were a big thing. And unfortunately, that dog was used and bred for those purposes too.
Oh.
However, I would say I do believe that genetics do make a lot of um, impact on a dog's behavior,
Hmm.
but from my understanding, there's always a barrier on a dog what to do. There are morals and ethics in place. So even if you have a dog who was bred specific to do specific things,
Hmm.
dogs do not. They don't have this idea of fighting. You
Hmm.
have to train into it.
Okay.
So you breed dogs to have a specific persistence,
Hmm.
a specific activity, and low destructibility. But the rest you have to train into. So those fighting dogs are trained to do that particular job, and the dog literally on his own would not do that. Let's say, for example, the Norwegian elk hounds were bred as war dogs,
Hmm.
and it didn't work out well because those dogs wouldn't fight. They just didn't. So there's a lot of force behind that to make a dog fight.
Right.
So, and I feel people should be aware of that. It's not because the breed it's equal a fighting dog, but many people train them to be one.
Okay. And they create some conditioning by which for them seeing another dog is a time to fight or attack.
It's basically a trauma behavior. But we
Okay.
see in America, we see the nanny dog was basically um, a bully breed,
Okay. Uh,
and it was not because he was aggressive. It's because his breed traits are good.
okay. The Staffordshire is part of the terrier group, or is that
Yeah,
like a
it's a terrier group.
okay? And terrier group were used in Europe for chasing
Yeah,
vermin
right,
in,
right.
in in the farm. Is that
Well,
my understanding?
they have different functions. The terriers. I remember um, they had also kitchen dogs.
Hmm.
They were basically. I know it sounds weird. They were appliance dogs because they were small. They would run in a wheel, and that wheel will function
Ah,
as a
okay.
motor for the kitchen.
Hmm.
Ventilations, for example, or mixing. So it was a kneading dog. So they were very small, able
Yeah.
to fit in that kitchen wheel.
They were by any means like a giant squirrel in a wheel.
Yeah, right.
That's very interesting. I did not know that part, but it's you know it's human nature. They have all kind of way of interacting with dog
So
and
having this kind of breed, we have to be conscious that because of the breed traits.
Mm-hmm.
You're not working counter aggression. You're working on not neutralizing those breed traits that
Okay.
can be used or easily be moved into being more reactive to things, being very protective
Right.
over the family, for example.
Great. We have another dog just to complete our show, and I think it's a dog that you are very familiar with.
Oh, the Chihuahua. Where's my Chihuahua?
Chihuahua. Yeah, that's a one Chihuahua. And we have a banner, and then we'll take the picture out because Roman, you have your own Chihuahua somewhere.
Yeah, let me bring my Chihuahua in here. Give me a second.
Well, well, it's gonna. I have to admit that I have some bad experience with Chihuahua in the past, and I would like to see this bad experience compensated or replaced by good experience.
Come on, up, up, up. Oh, it's kind
Here,
of stuck here.
here he is.
Oh, come on, there you go. Up,
Up, up, up.
come on, you can do it. Here is our Chihuahua. That's Misha.
Hey, good morning, Nisha.
Hi, Misha. Yeah, I just woke her up. She was like, "Oh, what happened?"
But you're a movie star now. You're on Facebook.
So Chihuahuas, people may not know, but they're sculptures of Chihuahuas back 300 before Christ.
Wow.
And archaeology found also that they had toys, like Chihuahua toys, like toys with wheels that
Hmm.
looked like Chihuahuas. Um, they had different types of dogs, like the apple head dogs and the deer head
Hmm.
uh, varieties, and they were used from priests. So they were pet dogs. Priests will hold them and comfort them,
Hmm.
and yeah, I really like that breed. They can be very intense, so very protective if we don't care of some things. And but we have always to keep in mind the dogs are four-legged species that need to
Hmm.
touch the floor once in a while.
Yes.
So yeah, you can carry a Chihuahua around because it's handy, but they should have contact with other dogs. Should be social.
Yeah.
Um, I see a lot of behavior problems because people don't treat the Chihuahuas like dogs. They treat them like dolls and
Hmm.
cause other problems, emotional and psychological problems.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if a certain dog does certain behaviors, people think like, yeah, it's just a small dog, no big deal. Like he's always like that. But if that particular dog would do the same thing like a Mastiff would do, oh, that would be dangerous because you can kill you.
Yeah.
So we see dogs do dog stuff and show dog behaviors, and if we don't manage them and we don't educate those dogs, they can be very intense and get hurt.
Hmm. I heard some pump running. I don't know if it's your background or somewhere there's a
I don't know.
some on my side there's nothing changed. Anyway, so we'll carry the conversation. We apologize for the background noise. It's part of a live broadcast. And so Chihuahua, I have a few dogs bite me, take a bite, mostly in my ankle, and most of them were Chihuahua or small, and all of them were small breed, by the way. And Chihuahua was the kind of dog I kind of stay away from for some behavior or bad experience. My auntie used to have a Chihuahua. She carried a Chihuahua like a puppy everywhere. She has a Chihuahua in her arms, and she answered the door, etc., etc. So that was my youth experience with the dog Chihuahua. And later, I have other encounter with other Chihuahua, and they were behaving more or less like ferocious dog.
Yeah, I feel that the big thing with small breeds is that there's a miscommunication. People
Hmm.
have wrong expectations. They see small dogs as small children,
Hmm.
and they treat them as babies and enabling them and that's the key factor. We have to see dogs as dogs, no matter the size. It's still a dog thinking like a dog thinks, and we don't let them live their real lives. Like for example, I see people don't use consent. They would just pick up the dog, just like that, without any consent. Even I know my dog for many years, and I still take permission to pick him up. If he doesn't want to get picked up, I don't pick him up. And I feel this violence of personal space and violence of emotions. Those dogs, that's being reactive. A hand comes up to you, it's going to do something to you without your consent. Well, it's not my person who's going to bite this person because I know what those hands do. So we basically treat dogs to become aggressive. And that's the main problem why small dogs are yappy dogs and are so, so mean sometimes. It's not their fault. We basically treat them to become that way. And people are just not aware of it just because they're small.
Are they protective by any means as their character try to protect, or what kind of behavior they have as a
I would
the
say
dog is
it's an alert dog. It's a personal alert dog, I would say.
okay.
And I have the feeling it's not clear that the ancient priests will have them as personal protection dogs. They were very handy in the temple. But also a comfort dog. Like if you see her, she's kind of like laying in my hands, putting her head into. They're really calm dogs, and they don't like disturbances.
Okay.
So I would say they have a hard time transitioning from one event to the other, which makes them a good alert dog. Everything that's new, the dog will react.
Okay. So they like a quiet, stable environment.
Right.
Do they need more exercise or go out and walk, or what is the level of
They
activity?
need exercise. They're sensitive to temperature,
Okay.
especially cold. Remember
yeah.
Chihuahua desert?
Uh-huh.
So this little girl would lay on 160 degrees floor in the sun, not in the shade. She would choose the sun in Phoenix, and I just couldn't get it. And 70 degrees, she would shake because she would cold, so she would have to wear a jacket.
Wow. That's interesting.
Chihuahua.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, as an interior dog, it's a good companion dog.
I would say, yeah, it's a very good companion dog. I would say she has healthy feeding. It's a very old breed that lives for a very long time with people. So people food is likely in their menu. And I say don't hesitate to feed your dog table scraps that are appropriate for dogs.
Okay.
No problem with that. But of course, all measures. We're not including potato chips, and we're not including, chocolate and snacks.
Right.
Just common sense feeding. But again, we have to consider dog is a predatory animal, and he needs, fresh diet that is appropriate for dogs. So we have to read up on that. We cannot just make our own mixes,
Right.
like chicken and rice all day long, because that will not be healthy for the dog.
Okay. In terms of life expectation, among all the breeds we look at today, my understanding or the impression I have is the smaller the dog is, the longer the life expectation is, and the biggest the dog is, the shortest the life expectation.
Looking at ancient scripts, ancient dogs could get about 25 years old.
Wow.
I have a terrier who's 17.
Okay.
There is no clear definition of how old dogs would get because really nobody mattered back then, how long a time is. But I recognize, I'm coming from Europe basically. I saw that in US, the life expectancy of dogs is lower than in Europe, to make a comparison. And I see that shift of lowering the life circle of dogs changed with integrating processed food into the diet.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the capacity would be at least, I would say, 17 to 25 years. But for breeding purposes, for the look instead of,
Mm-hmm.
the health,
Yeah.
we see that there's kind of like a downfall on the
Okay.
life expectancy.
I was reviewing the Great Dane some times ago, like a year ago, and they were saying the life expectation for Great Dane is between 8 and 10 years.
Yeah.
Is that the same scenario with the Mastiff, or is Mastiff has the life expectation of 17,
Yeah, they can
15 to
go to
20 years?
15 years max, but
15, you
again,
said?
it depends. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, but if you have, for example, a French Mastiff, that's much shorter.
Okay.
It's sad, but unfortunate.
Okay. Well, that was very interesting conversation to look at these different breed today. I really appreciate your input on that. And we were going to have another show next week. Kathy will be with us.
Yay!
And yay! I hope we did it well today. And we'll say thank you for our audience. Thank you for everybody for watching. And tell your friend. And we will be back. Okay. Thank you.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.